As President Trump begins his third month in office, we're getting a look at new polling numbers that show Americans are split in their support for the commander-in-chief. For more on how, I want to turn to CBS News Elections Director Anthony Salvanto, who's standing right behind me with a look at our latest CBS News Nation Tracker figures. So, Anthony, first of all, explain for our viewers how you break down the different types of support for the president.
Yeah, Elaine, in the Nation Tracker, we don't just look at Republicans and Democrats. We also look at how people view the Trump administration and what they want from it. And what we do is we categorize people first by the strongest Trump supporters. And we call those the believers, mostly because they believe in the president so strongly. There's another group that we call the conditionals. These are also Trump supporters, but they're folks who say they support him so long as he can deliver for them. That's why we call them the conditionals, because their support is more conditional. Then we've got a third group that we call the curious, because they're looking to the Trump administration to see what it can do for them, but they don't yet support him. These are people that he could potentially draw over to his side, particularly if he delivers on the economy. And then lastly, there's a fourth group, Elaine. We call these the resistors. They're about a third of the country. They're largely composed of Democrats and people who did not vote for the president, but they tell us in the polling that they say there's no way they would ever support him. And so we break them out as well, and we'll watch over time how these groups move, but they also separate very strongly on what they think is going on now in terms of Russia and the wiretapping and who they can believe and trust for information, Elaine.
All right, so that's the breakdown, Anthony, of the different groups. Let's put a pin in that for a second and talk about numbers regarding the issue of Russia. FBI Director James Comey confirmed the FBI is looking into whether there were any links between the Trump campaign and Russia. But, Anthony, how do Americans feel? Do they consider these allegations to be serious or, in some viewers' minds, just a political witch hunt?
Yeah, it's a mix, as so many things are, Elaine. I will show you. A lot of people say that it is a matter of national security, but they're heavily among Democrats that say that the most. Republicans, when you break it down that way, only a few call it straight out a matter of national security. There's a lot of folks who call it a mix, who say that it's partly in national security and partly just politics. One of the reasons for that, beyond this very clear partisan split, when you see that it's 62% of Republicans who say that it's just a matter of politics, and you see that there's a real split among people who say it's just both, one of the big reasons for that is that folks haven't yet connected this to their own lives. They're not yet sure how this affects and matters for them. So you see these partisan splits often when people are just watching what's going on in Washington and watching the parties go back and forth in trying to sort it out, Elaine.
So if that's the case then, Anthony, can you just give us a little bit more perspective here? Are the Russia allegations actually hurting President Trump right now?
Right. When you look at it by whether or not people say that it has affected their views of the president, I'll show you this next graphic where you see that 44% of all Americans say that it's making their views worse, but an almost same 46% say that it hasn't changed it at all. Now, a lot of these folks are his strongest supporters who say that they will be with him, period, and there really isn't much that has shaken their view, and this certainly, especially for those who say that it's just a matter of politics, isn't yet one of them, Elaine.
All right, let's turn to another controversy, President Trump's wiretapping allegations against former President Obama. The FBI says there's no evidence of the wiretapping. Heading into this hearing, Anthony, did Americans believe that President Trump was wiretapped?
Yeah, his strongest supporters did, and most other folks were more skeptical. Let me show you. Among those strongest supporters, now I remember I told you at the outset, we had categorized these folks by how strongly they backed the president. These are the folks we called the believers. They do believe that Donald Trump was wiretapped, 64% of them. But if you look at all those other support groups, including the conditionals and the curious, those people on the fence about the administration, much less so. A lot of them say no, and then there's another sizable third who say that it's too soon to tell, that the evidence is out. One of the reasons for this is who they trust on their information. Now, if you look at, I'll show you this next graphic, where people think they can get accurate information, you look at those strongest supporters, almost all of them feel that the president gives them a place where they can go to get the right answers, to get that accurate information, much more so than, as we might expect, they don't much trust congressional Democrats as they watch all of this. But look at also Donald Trump is higher than even congressional Republicans. This is part and parcel of a lot of his supporters don't much care whether or not he even follows the Republican Party. They trust him above all else. By contrast, all the others are much more mixed on who they can back and trust when it comes to trying to get accurate information. So that mixture there is where the strongest supporters really set the president apart, not only by their faith in what they think he can do and deliver, but where they think they can get an accurate portrayal of what's going on.
So, Anthony, to follow up here, do we see those views potentially changing in the future?
Well, Elaine, when you look at this and you see that the partisan splits here among congressional Democrats and congressional Republicans as sources of information are so mixed, it's hard to imagine right now, based on what we've seen, that Donald Trump's strongest supporters are going to move based on this, not only because they trust the president so much, but also because they say that this isn't affecting them. The question is going to be what happens with those folks on the fence, those conditional voters and those curious about the administration. Right now, one of the interesting things is that the Russian allegations are ranking about even or even a little lower sometimes than what they think of the health care bill and certainly how impactful the economy and the economic situation is going to be. And that's still going to be, I think, going forward, the thing that they tell us is going to make the most difference in how they evaluate the president.
All right, CBS News Elections Director Anthony Salvanto, really interesting figures. Thanks so much.
Thank you.